In Chinese aesthetics, beauty reaches its absolute peak at the very moment it begins to fade. The falling bloom, the waning moon, the scattering feast, what other cultures might dismiss as imperfection, the Chinese soul recognizes as the very place where poetry carries its greatest weight. In Dream of the Red Chamber, Lin Daiyu's burial of the blossoms is more than a simple act of mourning. Through those petals, she is confronting a 1,000-year-old destiny, an unwavering gaze at the inevitable fate of everything beautiful. Stepping into these pages, you encounter more than just characters and plots. You are submerged in a singular atmosphere, sadness. But this is not the sadness of despair. It is a sadness that has been savored, refined, and distilled into art. It lingers in Daiyu's poems, in Baoyu's eccentricities, and in the shadow cast over every feast, the silent realization that all grand gatherings must eventually scatter. It leads to a singular, profound mystery. Why has this culture, for centuries, elevated sorrow into the supreme form of beauty? In the world of Dream of the Red Chamber, two souls are most deeply attuned to this resonance of beauty, Lin Daiyu and Baoyu. Yet their sorrows emerge from entirely different roots. Daiyu's sadness is born of a relentless, painful clarity. She is so profoundly awake that she foresees the end before the beginning has even matured, sensing the wilt within the bloom and the parting within the reunion. In chapter 23, hearing the lyrics of the Peony Pavilion, my heart aches, my spirit lost, tears stream down my eyes, while others hear a melody. She hears the echo of her own destiny. This is what the literati call the spring of a melancholy heart, the burden of sensing decay at the very height of a flourish. For her, to be fully awake is to mourn. Baoyu's sadness is rooted in the fragile entanglements of human connection. Hearing the verses of the Burial of Flowers, he collapses on the hillside, weeping in total despair. As the commentator Jianzai noted, it is not the fallen bloom that brings such sorrow, but the inevitable ebb and flow of human ties. Baoyu does not weep for the petals. He weeps for the must of every farewell. In his desperate, pure-hearted obsession, he once wished to die, while all those he loved were still alive, so their tears might become a river to carry his body away. This was his childlike rebellion, an attempt to use the finality of death to freeze the warmth that was never meant to last. While Western tragedy often pursues catharsis and the purging of emotion, the Chinese aesthetic of sadness asks for nothing more than a steady and unwavering gaze. When Daiyu buries the petals, she seeks neither a cure for her grief nor an escape from her destiny. She is simply bearing witness. She accepts the tragedy, and in that silent suffering, her sorrow is transformed into a profound act of bearing witness. And that endurance in itself becomes a form of beauty. This unwavering gaze at sorrow is not confined into the realm of literature. It is the invisible thread woven through the entire fabric of Chinese art. In the world of painting, we see this in the one-corner landscapes of Ma Yuan. He often leaves the vast majority of the silk untouched, painting only a solitary fragment of a mountain or a stream. That void is not empty. It is the dwelling place of sadness, unspoken yet felt in every breath. Similarly, in Mizan's desolate riverbanks, there is never a human figure in sight. Yet it is precisely this absence that creates a profound sense of wistful longing. The viewer stands before the scroll and feels not pleasure, but a faint, nameless melancholy. In this tradition, melancholy is the aesthetic. In the strokes of calligraphy, we find this same trace in Yan Zhengging's draft of a requiem to my nephew. It is not a beautiful masterpiece in the conventional sense. The ink is staggered. There are frantic corrections, trembling lines, and drying strokes where the brush ran out of moisture, but the grief could not stop. Yet, in these very imperfections, we encounter a sincerity that resonates far deeper than polished perfection. The beauty of the manuscript lies in the traces of a broken heart, forever frozen in the movement of the brush. The sadness of Dream of the Red Chamber operates on the same aesthetics of the trace. Cao Zuiqin does not force us to watch Daiyu draw her final breath. Instead, we see the flickering firelight as she burns her poems. We do not witness the moment Baoyu renounces the world. We see only his solitary footprints receding into the deep white snow. Cao Zuiqin knew that true sorrow cannot be described. It can only be alluded to through the empty spaces. This marks the great divide between East and West, The melancholy of European romanticism is often volcanic. It is Wordsworth's "I wandered lonely as a cloud," or Byron's grand defiance, a sentiment that is expressive, grand, and declared to the world. It is a volcanic eruption of the self, but the sadness of the Chinese literati is a silent pool reflecting the moon. One is the roar of the fire, the other is the stillness of the water. This aesthetic of sorrow is rooted in a fundamental Chinese understanding of the world, impermanence. Whether in the shifting hexagrams of the I Ching, the passing torch of Zhuangzi, or the Buddhist cycle of rise and fall, the Chinese mind has long grasped that nothing remains immutable. Every flourish must fade, every feast must scatter, every youth must wither, and every reunion must end in parting. Yet this is not a conclusion of despair. On the contrary, it is precisely this profound awareness of impermanence that compels the Chinese to cherish the absolute zenith of the moment. A flower, knowing it will wither tomorrow, chooses to bloom with desperate splendor tonight. In Dream of the Red Chamber, every poetry club, every banquet, and every birthday carries this tragic weight, the defiance of blooming at its peak. When the imperial concubine Yuanshen returns home, she laments to her grandmother, "Sent me to a place where no one can see me." Her sorrow in that moment doesn't stem from current misfortune, but from a terrifying clarity that even amidst the height of luxury, she already sees the coming desolation. This is the core of Chinese sadness. It is not a lament for pain, but a premature farewell to joy. Motoi Norinaga used the concept of mono, nowhere to explain the tale of Genji, a delicate sigh for everything seen and heard. While this pathos of things shares a common root with the sadness and Dream of the Red Chamber, it tends toward a delicate sympathy with nature, as the heart flutters with the falling cherry blossoms, whereas Chinese sorrow is always anchored by the sheer weight of the human world. When Daiyu buries the flowers, she is burying more than just flowers. She's interring every pure life swallowed by a corrupt world. When Baoyu renounces the world, he is not just leaving a house. He is making an ultimate departure from all human entanglements. The melancholy of European romanticism, such as Goethe's Young Werther, points toward individual solitude and transcendence. But Chinese sadness remains anchored in the ethics of the world. Before disappearing forever into the white snow, Baoyu first kneels in a final solemn bow to his father. For this sorrow never seeks to transcend the world and remains forever inseparable from the human realm. Broadening our horizon, we see that the aesthetics of sadness is not unique to China. It is a universal language, spoken in vastly different dialects. The Japanese concept of mono nowhere, epitomized by the tale of Genji, is a sensitivity to the ephemeral beauty of a single moment. The cherry blossoms bloom for a mere 7 days, and it is precisely this brevity that defines their beauty. In this view, transience is not a flaw, it is the very essence of perfection. The melancholy of European romanticism is intimately tied to the self-consciousness of the individual. The heroes of Byron or Goethe are lonely, brooding, and perpetually at odds with the world. Here, sorrow becomes the mark of genius and a proof of transcendence over the mundane. This is an expressed sorrow, one that demands to be voiced, seen, and shared with the world. The sadness of Dream of the Red Chamber occupies its own singular space. It is not as purely natural as mono nowhere, nor as self-assertive as romanticism. It is deeply human, ethical, and silent. It does not plead, it simply presents. It does not accuse, it simply gazes. Even when all things return to the void, at least the tears remain warm. That warmth comes from the unbreakable entanglements between one soul and another. Returning to our opening mystery, why has the Chinese heart elevated sorrow to the supreme form of beauty? Because to the Chinese, fragility is the very core of beauty. A flawless piece of jade is less compelling than one with a delicate fracture, for that crack is a living trace of time. A blossom in full bloom is not as captivating as one that is drifting away, for in that falling, life finds its completion. Fragility is the prism through which beauty and sadness merge. Through this lens, we encounter a singular truth. Since all things are destined to fade, we must look all the more deeply at the here and now. The sadness of Dream of the Red Chamber is not a sigh of pessimism. It is the most tender glance offered to that which is passing away. Within this gaze live Daiyu's burnt poems, Baoyu's pure-hearted obsession, and the radiant lanterns of every feast, as well as the eyes that refuse to look away, even after the lights go out. This gaze is the response of Chinese culture to the void of impermanence. Since eternity is denied us, let us offer the world one last, deeply affectionate look.